Agenda item number 5, duck stamp request. Chief of Habitat Elmer Bull for possible action. The Commission will review, be asked to approve 16 projects submitted for funding from duck stamp funds. Total cost of the projects is $78,274. Go ahead, Elmer.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Chief of Habitat Elmer Bull. As mentioned, I'm here to present the project proposals that have been submitted for funding from the Duck Stamp Fund. You should have received a booklet like this that contains a bunch of information. First of all, it provides a summary of the accomplishments on those projects that were funded with Duck Stamp funding in fiscal year 2012. It also provides a list of the projects that have been proposed for funding in fiscal year 2013. That group of project proposals was reviewed by a panel of staff folks from NDOW, internal staff folks, and some adjustments made to those project proposals through that process. And this is the group that we are presenting to you today with a request for consideration of funding those projects. Also included in the booklet is a budget status of the Duck Stamp account. It's located on page 11 of the booklet. Provides the amount of money that was available in the Duck Stamp fund at the start of fiscal 2012. Shows an approximate, the approximate amount of revenue generated from Duck Stamp sales in fiscal 2012, an estimate of the amount of money that was spent in 2012, and that gives us an estimated balance going forward into this fiscal year 2013. One thing that I would like to note, and it's also included in that budget table, there were 3 projects that were approved for funding in fiscal 2012, and for a number of reasons, and it's detailed in the status report of those projects, we did not get to those projects in 2012. Some of it had to do with weather-related issues or climate-related issues, primarily too much water last year, so we weren't able to do a couple of them, and then another one wasn't completed because of a lack of support from NDF trustee camps. They didn't have personnel to support a controlled burn at the Key Pittman Wildlife Area. So we did not get to complete those funds. We intend to try to accomplish those projects in 2013 if we get that opportunity. So that's noted in the budget table. Bottom line is, based on our anticipated expenditures and anticipated revenues in fiscal 13, we anticipate having about $479,785 in that account at the end of fiscal year 13. Then in the booklet, there's copies of all of the proposals that were submitted and reviewed by our internal panel. Provides the details of each of the projects that have been proposed. And whatever your pleasure is, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer questions about these projects.
There was one question that came up at the Clark County Cab with regard to the Fallonwood Duck project, and I tried to, off the top of my head, give a good explanation of that the project goes well beyond just wood ducks, and I believe when Chris Nicolai gave the discussions last year with respect to that project, that it involves population modeling and that goes well beyond just wood ducks and can be used for other other projects, other modeling. And so maybe if you could just kind of give us an overview of that project. It is a big dollar item and it's continuing, and but it's just some backup and support for how important that project is.
Correct. And Dr. Nicolai is here today. I can, and we talked about this in Fallon last year regarding this project. The reason that we are able to continue to support this project is that the ultimate goal, and there's no guarantee that this is going to happen, but we're very hopeful that the data that's produced by this study could very well lead to a relaxation of regulations that waterfowl hunters are forced to abide by these days. And it's our feeling that, and based on anecdotal information in talking to hunters, many hunters over the years in managing a wildlife area, there are folks that have either gotten out of the waterfowl hunting game or they're not going to get into the waterfowl hunting game because of the complex regulations related to species and gender restrictions. And the work that Dr. Nicolai is doing on this study may yield information that could be used in future modeling and hopefully relax those standards. One thing that we're experiencing in our business is either declining or flat numbers of duck hunters, and anything that we might be able to do that's still biologically sound that would result in increased participation by waterfowl hunters would be greatly welcomed. If you'd like, I can have Dr. Nicolai come up and talk more specifically about where they're at with this thing and what they see in the years to come.
Might not be a bad idea, given.
Okay, great. Chris?
Morning. I've got some side papers here for you guys, just for your relaxed reading later, that I think lays out the question for you. You want me to just give a summary, or you got any specific questions?
Just a summary, just to kind of refresh the record for us of the project, and you know, what the ultimate purpose is, you know, along the lines of what Elmer was talking about.
All right, and interrupt me anytime if anything's not clear. With harvest regs, with waterfowl, typically when populations are higher, regulations are liberalized. When they're back down, they're more restrictive. And we've never been able to tease apart population trajectories. Is it due to hunting, or is it just due to habitat itself? So to learn that process, you have to disentangle the effects from each other. And to do so, you either have to, you typically have to mess with the harvest regulations away from how you traditionally do it. So a way the service, Fish and Wildlife Service, tried in the 80s with all 49 states and provinces was to have a series of years where they kept the regulations the same regardless of how habitat quality went up and down, which in waterfowl is typically measured by the number of breeding ponds in the prairies. Having that many players in the pot, when the drought of the mid-80s came, the whole experiment collapsed. No one wanted to go down into that realm for an experiment, and it's one of the most controversial topics that exist in many forms of human-induced kill of wildlife. You know, it could be deer, it could be wind turbine eagles, cats killing passerines, etc. You know, how much human kill of wildlife can occur before it becomes detrimental. And it usually takes an experiment to pull something like that off. And with the example with the stabilized regs experiment with the Fish and Wildlife Service, you had too many hands in the pot. So that's where the wood duck project comes in to play. Is it's more like studying them in a fishbowl. 83% of our recoveries are coming from Churchill County. So we're able to pull off an experiment similar to that with just one county playing the game. And it's of very big interest to a lot of people, and it's a very unique situation that we're just trying to maximize off of. So in a nutshell, I'd say that's the background of the idea, at least.
How much additional time before we, get to a point where we're going to have the data that you need?
Yep. So last summer when I showed you guys the presentation, which I'd be happy to do any other time you guys need information, just let me know. I've got a external drive in my pocket if you need to. Just let me know. Usually I got a computer in my truck if you run into me out in the marsh or something. What we're looking for is 3 treatment levels of harvest. So traditional or typical harvest rates for most species of waterfowl, including our wood ducks, is around the 12 to 15%. So we could classify that as a moderate level. And then our medium treatment level. We're also looking for a lower treatment level and a higher treatment level. So last year we came to the commission asking for a restrictive year where we back the wood duck harvest down to, or regulations down to 1 bird a day, attempting to get down in that 0 to 10 range. And then this next year, which we'll probably talk about in a month, is go up into the liberal. And with the Pacific Flyway frameworks, we're not allowed to go above 7 wood ducks a day, but we can encourage more people to go out and chase them, to use that 7 wood duck limit this year, ask people to hit them a little bit harder, and have a third treatment level of high harvest in the 20 to 30% range. And then replicate, so that would be the 2012-13 season. We'd like to replicate the low harvest year again and the high harvest year again. So that would be 12-13 for high, 13-14 for low, 14-15 for high again. And then we should have all the treatments if they work. So that's the plan, try to replicate the treatment levels twice. We do have several years of data prior to last year that are more in the moderate treatment level. So we don't need to request more of that. I think we've got enough data of the standard treatment level there.
Because ultimately is to determine whether the kill rates are additive or compensatory, and whether
exactly
any effect at all,
and how
for hunting.
How things get traded off. I mean, if we back down, if we have restrictive regs, does it help? And for example, pintails, we've had restrictive regs on since the early 80s, and yet the story hasn't changed much. 30 years should be enough for the population to rebound if harvest is an issue, correct? And intuitively, you'd think so. So yeah, it'll apply a lot of theory to some of these models we have. In the pintail, scaup, canvasback, black duck, and eastern wood duck populations all assume additivity. There's no room, well, there's potential, but typically the additivity models come into play. They get used more often. So this would show, give more support of how compensation occurs. Perhaps things are traded off with each other. If we don't kill them, something else will later. If we do kill them, perhaps they'll respond in a positive way. Maybe there'll be higher reproductive rates, the quality of the offspring produced are higher, et cetera. Just different ways to balance what's happening to end up with a stable population.
Okay. Well, sounds like a project well worth investing in. So.
And we're getting quite a bit of attention. We're working really hard to get some more partners involved to help share the cost. We did get a $4,500 grant from Fish and Wildlife Service from the Getting People Outdoors initiative. And it's basically to get a lot more volunteers out. I think this year we're probably over 200 individuals with over 2,500 volunteer hours. People actually handling ducks, letting them go. Just trying to hit some other highlights. We did have one student graduate on the project since last year.
How about the public response?
What's that?
Ken Mayer over here.
Oh,
How about the public response?
Of the project?
You must be shooting a lot. You're deaf.
Well, the surround sound, I'm like,
I am.
I started looking at everybody who's talking. And you're waving over here.
Look to your left.
Chris started his journey at 4 o'clock from Reno.
Yeah, that I understand.
You're
Lots
up
of coffee.
Oh.
But the public out. What's the public response been about this so far?
With the project in general or the harvest restriction? We definitely heard some grumblings, mainly just confusion from people. Wondering, they think I'm out there protecting the wood ducks I've been banding, where, they didn't listen to the part we're asking them to shoot them really hard this year. But I think, we get a lot of people out on the project, and I got stuck out at Stillwater one day hunting this year, and I was hoping to go back in time to go catch ducks that night. Some guys pulled me out, why don't you come hunting with us? It's like, no, I spent too much time getting my truck unstuck. I got to go band ducks. Next thing I know, I got 12 other duck hunters with me that never banded ducks before.
Right.
So we're getting a lot of people out, and the outreach has been and we're getting attention from everybody on this one.
Now, this is going to be published, right, and peer-reviewed? And
Yep. That's where I wanted to back up a little bit. The student that graduated, he's got 2 papers that we're submitting to Journal of Wildlife Management. He got a permanent job with Fish and Wildlife Service with Division of Migratory Bird Management, the D.C. office. He's based in Portland. But I think the The neater part about it is, like, was it 2 more weeks is the Pacific Flyway Study Committee meeting? So this is probably the first time that people who have worked in Nevada, that we've had this much representation at the study committee. And you've got me, Russell, and now Steve.
Mm-hmm. And Director Mayer's at a little higher level, but how's the, is this study going to be received well by the feds and lead to some maybe changes, and so we can get these duck hunters back out in the field?
Yeah, I think, Ken Mayer, for the record, all eyes are on us. It's kind of neat to have the driest state in the nation having a study like this that really addresses this compensatory versus additive mortality issue. Like he said, with the pintail, here we've been suffering with pintail restrictions, yet pintail numbers really haven't, changed from what their high is. So this, all eyes are on us. So this is for the amount of money that we're putting into this. Yeah, this is going to be a great deal. And with having Dr. Nikolai doing this, we know it's going to be in a published peer-reviewed journal. So.
Yeah, and I do have a copy, an article that my old advisor got out that basically begs for a project exactly like this. So if you guys want, I print off enough copies, I think 10 of them.
Yeah, go ahead and.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'll go ahead and bring back to the commission, Commissioner Rain.
Thank you. Couple questions. One of which is, not how much money are we into this project now? And then you say 2 more years, 3 more years, and that's done? Or what comes after 2, 3 more years?
No, no, I think you're right. Dealing with hunting seasons and biological seasons and fiscal years confuses the daylights out of me consistently. 1, 2, 3 more hunting seasons.
And that's done?
That should do it for the harvest experiment. Can I provide some information from how the harvest experiment went this year? Sure. When we ban birds, we have to turn in sheets called banding schedules to the bird banding lab in Washington, D.C. When you shoot bands, I don't have my keychain on me now, there's an 800 number for hunters to report the bands on, and hopefully they report them. Every week, I get a report to bander sheet from them telling me which bands were reported to them and why. Typically, it's hunting. So I keep track. I get it every Monday. Every Monday, it's like a kid opening Christmas presents to see what came in. And as I was mentioning before, we were hoping for a 0 to 10% harvest rate. In an experiment like this, what would be ideal would to acquire information on what would the population do in the absence of harvest. So actually that 0 to 10 range treatment that I mentioned, statistically you'd like it to be as close to 0 as possible. I do not want to propose to close duck season because I know accidents happen, and personally I don't want people to get tickets for an experiment. But we want everyone to be on the same page. If we had a voluntary reduction, there'd be people that would cheat the system and the experiment wouldn't work. So this last year, we were hoping for the 0 to 10 range. This year, it actually ended up being 9%. So changing, we went from 15 to 14, I think 13% the last 3 years before this harvest restriction, which was 7 ducks a day for 107 days. This year, we went to 1 wood duck a day for 107 days. And it almost did not change. It did get us into that below 10%, but just by a hair. So I wanted to share that information with you guys. This year we are asking for a liberal package, so I don't think that's a very hot topic for this year compared to last year, but I'd like for you guys to think about, and maybe we could have some type of discussions that when we do ask for the restrictive replicate in 2 hunting seasons from now, how could we gain the best data possible to get down in that lower level of that treatment level? Does that make sense? Now, I'd be up for being creative for that, and how much interest you guys have in helping us gain the the data we're proposing for this study.
The question was, how much money are we into this project by now? And after the harvest experiment portion in about 3 years is over, are we done, or what happens at that point?
Yeah, I guess for money, for the harvest experiment, this was the we're just about done with the first year of the harvest experiment. Now, the money we received earlier was for more mortality and just monitoring the population, which started in 2007. I think that money started around, that would have been February '07 we started using that money. So that would be maybe 6 years we've been awarded money between Duck Stamp and Heritage, which has been matched substantially from other agencies and organizations as well. For the harvest component for the experiment, I'd like it to end if we can collect the best data possible. We'd be done with the last replicate of the liberal package, and then we'd be done for the harvest experiment. After that, more questions might be developed. Other funding sources have to be explored as they are now. So definitely not putting nails in the coffin for that last year. I mean, there's other management questions we could have interest in, or other theoretical ones as well. Just gotta get creative. Yes?
Commissioner Schrum?
Excuse me, but I don't think you understood Commissioner Rain's question. The question was how much money. Now, if I remember correctly, last year you came to us and asked for $20,000 and under the impression that the $20,000 was going to be the end amount because it's already been studied for several years. At that time, I questioned the amount of money. I questioned it again this year. At that time, I was told last year that this was good business. Well, this is not good business. We keep spending money. Now you're telling me that this year you need another $32,000 for an ongoing problem, situation, a study you're doing with no definite results. You're looking for things and you're performing experiments, but you're spending the sportsman's money to do this, okay? Now, so far you haven't told us how much money in the past we spent. We're supporting people who are studying for their PhDs and graduating people, and Dow's not supposed to be in the business for that. So now we've gone from a program that was supposed to end last year at $20,000, $32,000. Now you're talking about the next 2 or 3 years. This is like a money pit that we're looking at, and I don't think the sportsmen are going to be happy about the fact they're not being nickeled and dimed. This is $20,000 and $30,000 at a swat here. Doesn't take long. You've got a couple $100,000 wrapped up in this. And to me, this, I'd like for us to give us a definite answer and don't tell us, well, we're looking at this year and then next year and next year. It's an ongoing thing. This is not fair to the sportsman.
I think to provide some clarity, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought this issue came up last summer when I proposed, I know I had a slide in there at least for the multiple treatment levels going through, I think, the same dates I mentioned 10 minutes ago. And I remember this coming up, how long are we in this for? If we start this, it was something along these lines, do we have to commit to doing this every year? And I think that's when I tried to explain we'll try to find partnerships for this as well. And we're starting. It's a slow process with the fiscal year process just to get things rolling. So, yeah.
Can you give us, do you have the information handy, how much money so far that has been invested in this program?
Okay, that's where I was looking for clarity from Mr. Raines earlier. If we start from last year, we're just ending the first year of the harvest experiment. If that's it, it's just last year's award. If we bring in the other components we've studied for this, that'd be 5 years from anywhere from, I think, 10,000 to 40 each year.
Well, we're not looking at 10,000. We're looking at 32,000 this year. 20,000 last year, 32 this year. So now,
Yep.
am I just being confused and I don't understand? Is that it?
Mr. Schrum and Mr. Rain, yeah, I don't have the numbers handy here as to how much duck stamp money has been expended on this project. I believe last year was the 4th or 5th year that we have funded it, and it's varied in level. Last year we requested $40,000 for this project, and it was approved. Other years were less than that. I can definitely get you those numbers pretty easily. I do not have the numbers from all of the years that we funded this project, but I can get that to you. But if this is the 4th year, or last year was the 4th year, I'm going to guess that we're somewhere in the $100,000 to $150,000 range. I would point out that the request for this project this year is $17,000 less than last year, and Chris is actively and has been encouraged to seek out funding partners for this project, and he's been working with the Fish and Wildlife Service as well as Delta Waterfowl on trying to get additional funding for this project so that we can partner on it. Another thing that I would mention too is that the amount of volunteer activity related to this project is extensive. So it would, if we were paying more people to do this project, it would definitely be a lot more costly to us. But there's a tremendous volunteer corps involved in this, which has a number of advantages. First of all, providing a lot of help out in the field, but also building understanding about what this project is about and what waterfowl management is about. But I could definitely go back and I can provide you with the numbers in what we have expended on this project from the first time we funded any portion of it.
Since 2003, when it first started, is that right? That was the year it started, right?
Yeah, the first year it was funded was 2007.
It was funded by other sources in 3, and then...
It was completely out of my own pocket at that point.
Okay, any other questions, Commissioner Drew?
This question's for you, Elmer, and it's just a straightforward. Are there any projects on this list that are lacking for money, or other priority projects that fell off the list that?
No.
Okay. No,
Commissioner Drew, we funded all of the projects at the full amount that we were asked for. One thing that I would point out, it's a little bit interesting about this year's, we asked for $3,600 in funding for some water control structures at the Carson Lake and Pasture. And we are currently working with biologists from Ducks Unlimited on development of a grant from the North American Waterfowl Conservation Act. And the $3,600 for those water control structures would be our portion of the contribution of match for the NACA grant. That could potentially provide $1 million in funding through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Intermountain West Joint Venture to do conservation projects at the Mason Valley Wildlife Area, Smith Valley, and the Carson Lake and Pasture and Stillwater National Wildlife Refuge in Fallon. So we're very hopeful that that grant comes forward, but that would compose NDOW's portion of the match for that grant. So we're crossing our fingers that we receive that funding.
Any further commission comment? Okay, thanks, Elmer. Okay, so this this is an action item. So we are approving. We're basically seeking to approve the duck stamp projects that are on the list on page 10. Total amount $78,274, and we've gone over a couple of them, specifically the wood duck project, so I guess I'm looking for a motion. Oh, public comment. That's right. Excuse me. I'm sorry. So why don't we go ahead and take it out to the public? Anybody from the public have any comments? Rex, come up.
Rex Flowers, Washoe County Cab. Specifically on the wood duck project. A few years back, funding was coming out of the heritage projects, or heritage funding. So I know at that time we had a lot of discussion at our county, and they were always like, this should come from duck stamps. It shouldn't come out of heritage. They've moved it over to there. I think that's a positive note. They said at the time they didn't want to see the project go away. It's a great study on wood ducks. It's the study on wood ducks. We have a number of duck hunters within our community that hunt out of the Fallon area and stuff. Nobody from the duck hunting community has ever complained about spending the money for the wood ducks. I mean, it's their money, and they're not complaining, so I would hope you would support it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Come on up.
For the record, Paul Dixon. Listening to the questions that a couple of the commissioners had here about where we were going and, whether we'd have definitive results. I have received my PhD in 1989. I'm a scientist first, and I will tell you that there's no study that comes out definitive. What you get is, along the process, the next set of questions that need to be asked, but you've answered some. Right now, all we have is conjecture on things, and we're collecting real data here. And I think listening to the work that Dr. Nikolai is doing, I think he's doing it in a very reasoned and stepwise fashion. And we should expect that we'll get part of the answer and be able to make better informed decisions as we go into the future for the next set of studies. But this is something that he could do for a career with students. And at the end of the day, we'll probably be, as a nation and a state, much better understanding of how we do our harvest objectives. But we're not going to get the answer after the 2015 season. We'll have a piece of the puzzle answered. And people need to understand that the science isn't, you do something, you have a definitive answer. It isn't like building a house. When you're done, you can look at something. It's like planning the house and then building a wall and then figuring out where you're going to put the next wall because you haven't really planned for where you want to do things. You have to look at how it all goes together. So we have to keep that in perspective when you're doing science. And if you've got that scientific bent in your mind, it's to try to get to the ultimate answer. And the type of money we're talking about here is really, really small change considering where we've spent money doing other things that supposedly were in the name of scientists with heritage funds, and we have not seen any return on investment for those funds. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other public comment? Come on up, Dr. Nikolai.
Just wanted to let you guys know if you were interested in a talk at the August meeting, just shoot me an email. I'll be happy to come.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other public members of the public commenting on the duck stamp projects? Okay, I'll bring it back to the commission. Any further comment, questions from the commission? Commissioner Strom?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, could they get by with less money on this wood duck project?
Come on up, Elmer.
I guess if the funding was not granted, we'd figure out some way to do it, but I'm not sure how that would be. As I mentioned, the funding request this year was reduced by $17,000 or close to that. We would appreciate support on this project, and I think it's a good expenditure of funding. But of course, it's up to the board, but we feel that this project deserves the support. And that's what duck stamp funding is for. It's to accomplish things like this, projects on the ground, things that are going to support this sport.
Okay. And I think Commissioner Drew's question and the answers that were provided answered this question, that there are no additional funds needed anywhere else. And so I think that was the purpose of that question, and so I'm satisfied with that.
You ready for a motion?
Huh?
You ready for a motion?
I believe I am.
I move to approve the duck stamp request.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further comments? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to number 6, Upland Game Stamp Request. Chief of Habitat, Elmer Bull, for possible action. The commission will review and be asked to approve 13 projects submitted for funding from Upland Game Stamp funds. Total cost of the projects is $240,050.
Mr. Chairman, Elmer Bull for the record. I have asked Mark Farman to present the Upland Bird Stamp project proposals to the committee today. Mark is a staff specialist in the Habitat Division. He's responsible for managing the obligated reserved accounts, as we call them, which includes duck stamp, upland bird stamp, habitat conservation fee, and mining assessment. He also manages the industrial artificial pond permit program in our division and is actively involved in the water development program, or guzzler program, for us. So Mark is going to present those projects today.
Thanks.
Good morning.
As Elmer said, my name is Mark Farman. I'm staff specialist in the Habitat Division, and hopefully you all received a copy of the proposed Upland Game Bird Stamp Program projects for fiscal year 2013. I'm just going to briefly review these and the related budget status, and then open it up to see if you have any questions. We also have people in the audience that can help answer. Some of the project managers are here today. So if you turn to page 21 of this report, you'll see that we have a wide range of projects, 13 total, that if you add up the amount they're requesting from this program, it equals $262,450. The night before we went to press on this report, the Carson Valley Chucker Club very generously donated $24,400 to a list of projects which I have with me. I was just going to briefly review, but all of them are Upland Game Bird Stamp projects except for one. So if you take the amount of money that goes to the Upland Game projects, that's $22,400 of their $24,000 donation. So that brings the total down to $240,050, which is the purpose of that footnote on that page. So we're actually requesting the $240,050. So the projects they are donating money towards, one of them is a habitat conservation fee project to help pay for labor at 2 greenhouses in Winnemucca. The rest of them are all Upland Game Bird Stamp projects. All three of Sean's here today, all three of his projects received some funding ranging from $2,000 to $5,000 each. And then they also helped fund, they're going to pay $5,000 for the Northern Nevada Small Game Water Development Project, $2,400 for Mason Valley food plots, and then they're also contributing $3,500 to the Sage Grouse Telemetry Project, which is described in your report. So if you turn to page 22, the next page, we're expecting, the bottom line is that we're expecting the total balance in the Upland Game Bird Stamp Program account to be approximately $60,000 higher at the end of this fiscal year. That's a result of slightly lower spending this year. This year's project proposals are roughly $144,000 less than they were last year. We have some projects that are going to continue into 2013, but despite that, given the lower amount of proposals combined with the revenue that the program generates, the bottom line there is we're expecting roughly about a $500,000 balance at the end of this fiscal year. The rest of the time, I just wanted to briefly hit a couple highlights, a couple unique features about the projects this year, and then open it up for any questions. One thing that's unique that I think is pretty exciting is the Sage Grouse Telemetry Project. There's also mule deer telemetry work that we're funding. What these with the mining assessment fee program for the mule deer work, what these two types of projects have in common is we're developing really important migration and movement data that can be used much earlier in the mine development process. As you probably know, we typically get involved in the NEPA mitigation phase with the Sage Grouse project, and the mule deer work that Tony Wasley is doing that's going to allow us to provide a lot of really useful data that can be used to hopefully affect what's called the plan of operation, which is another name for the project definition phase of the NEPA process. So we're pretty excited about trying to get that type of really important data early on. And that's the purpose of the Sage Grouse project that's on the bottom of your table here. And then another thing that's unique this year is the Southern Nevada Water Development Project includes work. In fact, our biologists right now are siting new guzzler sites to benefit mountain quail for the first time. So we're trying to put more emphasis on expanding an existing mountain quail population near the California border in the Sylvania Mountains into the nearby Palmetto Mountains, which is in Esmeralda County. And we're also looking at northern Lincoln County, the Clover and Delamar Mountains, where you'll also get chukar and gamble quail benefits, but the long-term goal is to pick sites that we believe mountain quail will benefit from. So that's a little bit unique too this year. So anyway, that's all I had as far as my presentation. Are there any questions?
Go ahead, Commissioner McNabb.
Thank you. Mark, you had touched briefly on the 22,400 from the Carson Valley Checker Club. Could you break those down for
Sure.
which projects those are going
in fact, I have a handout. If I don't know if we have a Xerox machine or not, but I can, maybe during the break, I can make a copy, but I can go through those real quick right now if you prefer. The first project is called, it's the only habitat conservation fee project. That's called the Winnemucca Greenhouse Labor Support Project. The second one is the Columbian Sharp, that 2,000, you want the dollar amounts too?
Yeah.
$2,000 for the Winnemucca Greenhouse Project. The Columbian Sharp-tailed Grouse Reintroduction Project is $5,000. The Greater Sage Grouse Research and Monitoring Project, $3,500. The Ruffed Grouse and Mountain Quail Translocation Project, $3,000. Northern Nevada Small Game Water Development Projects, $5,000. Mason Valley Food Plots, $2,400. And the last project is the Sage Grouse Telemetry Project, $3,500.
Thank you.
Sure.
Oh, go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you. The Columbian sharp-tailed grouse reintroduction, what happened to the last one?
Sean is here today. It's more appropriate if he helped answer that. There was a project that, you're talking about the fiscal year 2012 project that involved that species, is that your question?
My question is, if it's a reintroduction, there must have been some put in there before, and what happened to them if we've got a...
Sean will need to answer that.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, Sean Espinoza for the record, Nevada Department of Wildlife, Upland Game Staff Specialist. This is a project that we've been working on for several years, but has been difficult kind of to get off the ground. We're working in historic Columbian sharp-tailed grouse habitats. We have not conducted a release in there in the past. That last project, there was basically $0 spent out of that, and we've had to do some preliminary work that was requested of us by the Idaho Department of Fish and Game before they would allow us to actually get birds from the state of Idaho. So we had to do a vegetation assessment of the release sites. So we conducted that last summer with the help of Pete Coates and the USGS. And the results from that analysis are that our habitat conditions within the Columbia Basin and the Bull Run Mountains are actually as good or better in some cases for some of those habitat components that than the actual sites that we'd be taking from near Rockland in Idaho. So we've done that. There's been a change of hands in land ownership there, and so we're coordinating with the new landowner on that particular project. So there's a lot of stars that needed to align before we were able to actually get approval from Idaho Fish and Game to move forward on the project.
So my question is that it sounds like they've never been introduced there before. Just you're saying that in the past there was some, but NDOW hasn't introduced them in there before then. That
is correct. Yeah, we do have historic records from newspaper articles in that particular part of the world that sage grouse were actually, or Columbian sharptails were actually numerous in that part of the country.
While you're up there, one other thing I had concern about is it's not much money, but the Kirch Wildlife Management Area, the pheasant purchase, $1,000. Where do you figure on releasing them over there?
You want to answer that, or?
Elmer knows about that project.
That project refers to a type of project that we've also implemented at the Mason Valley Wildlife Management Area using some devices called surrogator boxes. And essentially those are placed out in the areas where these birds will ultimately be released. Day-old chicks are purchased and brought and put into those surrogators. The principle behind the surrogator program is to minimize the exposure of the birds to human presence, thus attempting to maintain or retain their wild qualities. At the Kirsch Wildlife Management Area, the release, I believe, would occur in the area of what they call the dove field. There's about 65 or 70 acres of upland habitat that Marcus has been farming, not too far below the headquarters, and I believe that's where they would intend to release these birds and with the surrogator boxes.
So it's not going to be right around the reservoirs then?
I don't believe so.
Yeah, we used to have pheasants there where the store is. When Millie was alive and still running the store, she had pheasants running all around there, but we didn't have, I mean, around the store, we didn't have any predator problem really. But you're going to have a lot of predator problem over there.
Well, the intent was to release those birds in the highest quality habitat that we have for those birds, and then any future expansion of the population.
The habitat's not the problem. It's going to be the predators. You got lots of hawks up there, and well, you know, coyotes everywhere. You can hear them howling every night.
Well, we'll continue to monitor the presence of predators, and particularly you know, ravens. We have large populations of those, and attempt to address that.
Yeah. Thank you.
I just have, go ahead. Sure do.
Yeah, one question I had, just so I'm clear, it sounds like we've freed up $22,400 from our bottom line total that we could either turn back into the principal of the account or redistribute among these projects. So my question, and maybe this is for Sean, and in particular to some of the sage grouse projects, are there any projects where we could use some more funding and expand our capacity on this?
Don't fall over.
I'm not sure you can talk.
Members of the commission, Sean Espinoza, Upland Game Staff Specialist for the record. There's always opportunities, I think. I'd have to take a little bit closer look, but for the projects that we have identified within the current plan, I think we're pretty close. Now, if I did propose more, I have to be sort of careful because that usually entails more work. So, but I believe that for where we're at right now, we're in pretty good shape.
All right, and just to follow up on that, I guess my thought would be on your greater sage grouse research and monitoring, which I think was proposed statewide, and then you specified some specific mountain ranges. To me, that might be one place, given everything that's going on, that might make sense. Is that something you guys could utilize, or?
Yeah, particularly for that Mount Grant population, the bi-state area in particular. You know, California has done their work in terms of marking birds and figuring out where these birds are going, what's the critical habitat. We've done it in a spotty nature. I think a more comprehensive effort is in order there for the bi-state population. So particularly with what we found last year during the helicopter survey effort, where we intensively surveyed some of the unknown areas, I think that we could target some areas and mark some birds and really figure out what they're using and try and identify that as the priority areas.
So if we put an additional $22,000 in that greater sage grouse research and monitoring project, could you use it?
Yes, I could.
Okay.
Commissioner Raines?
Thank you. One of the projects that looked like, you know, being in Elko County that might have one of the larger effects here was the sage grouse telemetry project here, because I'm, you know, just to read the one paragraph out of it. The proposed project designed to collar sage grouse in the vicinity of expected mine projects within Endow's eastern region. The goal is to start gathering sage grouse spatial use data so Endow is better informed to provide meaningful input into mine design and mitigation. proposals of mining companies while supplying more overarching information regarding sage-grouse use patterns and their implications on mine development projects. Now that seems, I mean, we're in the eastern region, Elko County is the center of that. What I'd like to kind of know what, if have the mines had any input on this? Is this, and this is clearly, you know, fairly new to the area.
Yeah, I can help, I can answer that.
Where is this leading?
The proposed project is proposed to be funded 50-50 with what we call the mining assessment fee revenue, which as you're probably familiar, mines, when they get what's called an industrial pond permit, they also pay what's called a mining assessment fee. And the Nevada Mining Association fully reviews those projects, which are prepared in a package, which I brought with me today. And we're going to be meeting with them. I think it's next week, I believe, next Wednesday or Thursday. And they're going to be providing us their comments on that very project, along with other mining assessment fee projects. And the idea for the project is, if you look at the northern part of the Carlin Trend, there's the mountains surrounding Boulder Valley, I believe it is. There are 3 mine expansions: Newmont, Arturo, and then a third. I have a map here if you want me to get into the specifics, but basically the idea is to better understand the movement and habits of the sage grouse in that area before those 3 projects expand. That's the scope of work, basically.
So we haven't really had the input from the mining association at this point.
We're going to get that next week.
And so if this funding is approved and it goes to them and there's
like I said, it's jointly funded. So we have half the money, which is basically $30,000 minus the Carson Valley Chucker donation, would come from the Upland Game Birds Grant Program, and then $30,000 would come from the mining assessment fee revenue.
So we're assuming that they're going to go ahead and provide that.
The mining, you're talking about the mining association?
Yeah.
Yeah, the mining association doesn't have discretion over project approval. They have the ability to provide comments, and we modify the scopes of work using the comments we receive from NMA, but they do not have the yay or nay approval authority on individual projects.
Mr. Chairman, maybe I could enter in here. This is not done in a vacuum, Commissioner Rain. We've been working with the mining organization, and they know these projects are coming. The whole intent of the mining assessment fee program is to be working with the mining companies hand in glove to try to get ahead of these issues. They certainly don't want to be in a position where all of a sudden they go, oops, I wish we'd have known that if we'd have done this project a quarter mile away or a mile away, we wouldn't have any problems with sage grouse. So it's not that they haven't had input on this thing. Their final input is going to be vis-a-vis this meeting that we've got set up a week from now. So
correct.
We don't anticipate any pushback from them at all relative to this.
You can see my little trepidation on this particular project is if we haven't heard from them yet we're approving it, anticipation of them being good with it and not having any major modifications. I'm a little bit well, maybe there's some members of the public that are in the mining association or something. I'm not certain.
Well, I should point out that we, in addition to the Boulder Valley projects I mentioned, there are a number of other mining expansion, as you probably know, in Elko County, and we have the full flexibility if we need to pick different areas based on comments we receive, et cetera. So we do have some flexibility there. It's not like we're locked into one mine expansion area only. So that would help if we do receive some comments along those lines from the Mining Association.
Commissioner Howell.
Just one quick question, because I haven't heard you speak before. Is the federal government ever going to come up with a number? How many sage grouse do we need in Nevada, and for how many years do we have to maintain that population to get us off the list? That's a simple question. It seems to me like that would be a...
I think it sounds like a simple question, but I think it's very complicated, as Sean can elaborate on.
Members of the commission, Sean Espinoza again, Upland Game Staff Specialist for the record. I think if you were to ask that same question to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, I think they would say, and we've heard them say this before, that it's really about the habitats that the bird depends on. It's not about numbers as much. And certainly we've seen a decline in sage-grouse populations since the 50s, and the range of the bird has decreased by over 40%. So when the Fish and Wildlife Service looks at that in total, they say something needs to be done to conserve what remains so that we have birds in perpetuity. So it's less about numbers and more about habitat.
Okay, let's change the question then. How much habitat do we need?
Well, that's a good question, and that's what the Conservation Objectives team for the Fish and Wildlife Service is reviewing right now. If you look at the periphery of the range, and really the core of sage-grouse habitat is in Wyoming, the Wyoming Basin, and it's in northeast Nevada, the Owyhee Desert into Idaho, southeastern Oregon, and then a portion of the northern Great Basin. The periphery of the range has been fragmented. North Dakota, South Dakota. I spent a few days in Colorado. That's really somewhat periphery of the range, and it's pretty fragmented. A lot of habitat conversion to agriculture in many cases. A lot of fragmentation due to high-speed roads, transmission lines, energy development. But when you look at what's remaining in the core, you really want to maintain that as a quality habitat, less those factors, because in those populations on the periphery, we're seeing that they're on their way out. I don't know how long North Dakota and South Dakota will have sage-grouse for, and we know what the factors are there. And if you introduce those factors in other areas, portions of the Great Basin, we may not have sage-grouse in perpetuity. Sheetgrass is a major issue for us, and it's not getting any better, in my opinion. In many cases, it's getting worse. So there's some things we have to do there to change that tide.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Schrum.
I believe the number that Commissioner Howell is looking for is 5,000 birds. There was a study done by a range company here in town. They did it for the Baton Ranch, and I have all the information. I just don't have it with me. But the number, the Great Basin is one of the two areas, the two major areas that have sage-grouse, and the number is 5,000. And we have 41 areas that have 5,000 birds in them. Okay. 8 of those have more than 5,000. So the sage-grouse is not in any way endangered at this time, nor will be at any time. And so if anyone would like, tomorrow I'll have all the information, because I was saving it until the sage-grouse presentation comes up tomorrow.
So is that a question or just a statement?
That was just to answer Commissioner Howell's question of how many birds, and the number is 5,000 is the minimum.
Well, and I'm going to jump in here for a second, Sean.
Why don't you state what your position is?
My name is Jack Robb. I also sit on the Governor's Sage-Grouse Committee, and that question came up specifically during the committee. And there is not a number that can be tied to that. That 5,000 number, the gentleman from Fish and Wildlife Service got up and gave us examples of snails that happen to be on the endangered list that in a square foot have thousands of them, but they're still endangered. It's not a number, and you can't tie potential listing to specific numbers like that. And through his presentation, he showed that. I understand what where you're coming from and how they came up with that, but in this situation, it was showed to us that it doesn't work that way.
And Ken, Mayor, for the record, and the service summarily rejected it. They were sued twice and lost in court. So we basically moved on from from that number. And the service basically told the governor's Sage Grouse Task Force that it's about a population number, and it's not germane to the discussion of sage grouse. So they're the ones making the decision.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could just clarify on that number.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think what I want to do is dial this back to, we are on an agenda item that deals with specific projects that are being approved on the Upland Game funds. I don't want to see this converted into a sage grouse issue, even though obviously sage grouse is very important. But if it has to do with the projects, then let's go ahead and continue. But if it doesn't, let's hold over any comments on sage grouse to that agenda item tomorrow. And so I do have a question, and deals with the projects and with our funds. And the question that I have is right along the lines of the question that Commissioner Drew raised with regard to the $22,000. I like where he's going with that. I also want to point out that the fund, when you look at page 22, the fund has gone up $60,000 from last year. And my question to you is that do we need any additional funds over and above the $22,000 with regard to specifically the two sage grouse projects? Because anybody who's following this issue knows that we are at a critical juncture when it comes to sage grouse. And I don't mean to be throwing money at projects, but if there's a need for additional funds, I don't see any reason for it to be sitting in an account when we have a need to get dollars on the ground at this critical time, in the sage grouse issue that we're presented with. And so if there's any additional funds that are needed, this would be the time to be asking the commission, to get those funds.
Did you want to respond to that? We were answering your question between us.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that sage grouse telemetry project that was proposed initially by Alan Janae, if I was going to direct funds in any of those realms, those projects, I guess that one would be it because of the number of mining issues that we're facing today, whether it's expansions or new mines. And the initial project only recommended, I think, 3 transmitters per project to try and figure out what birds were doing. But quite frankly, that sample size is probably too small. And we'd be better served if we increase that sample size across the mining areas that have been proposed.
So one option, Alan's not here, I believe. One option is to supplement the GIS collars with what are called VHF transmitters, the more traditional collars, which are a lot less expensive, get more bang for the buck. They're only $200 each, roughly. However, the data retrieval's an issue, but Sean, he has an air contractor that he uses a lot with the game division. So he and I have talked with Alan about perhaps expanding that telemetry work with a lot more VHF collars and then using an air service to do data retrieval. It's really not that expensive because we use that service so much on game survey flights that the retrieval of the data from the VHF collars would be very cost effective. So that would be a project that we could expand the budget, like I said, for both VHF collars and the related aerial flights.
So do you have you given any idea as to a number that you might need to, because this seems to be very, very critical. We have been looking at stuff coming through our emails, and we've got a number of meetings that are going on right now and trying to determine this core habitat, and it just seems that now is the time. It's the critical time. And so, if we have a number, and if we really have a need, and it sounds like that if you're doing if you're trying to figure out where the birds are and what their impact is on the mining industry, and that seems to be exactly where the governor would want the money spent, is to get a handle on the impact of these birds on our industry, one of our top industries in the state. Then I think that if we have the funds, we'd be crazy not to be getting the money on the ground and figuring out what needs to be done.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have a specific number for you right now, but we've just been discussing this issue with Alan in the last week, but we could, if you're interested, we could come back with a specific number.
That or even take a short.
But Sean would need some time to talk to Alan about that, unless you have something right now.
I guess, Ken Mayor, for the record, I guess a couple of options to get us off this. If you're looking for a set number, I guess we don't have that for you today. If you authorized an additional limit, whatever that number might be, 20, 30, 40, 50,000, whatever, that we would then go back and take a look at what the cost would be to expand. We don't need to go crazy with colors, but we need a number to be able to do some statistical analysis.
Okay, well, I guess what then kind of along the lines maybe is we'll see how the motions go, but maybe we propose to spend up to an additional $60,000. That is the the additional funds that we received, and get that and then you determine how much of that you really need. Anyway, okay, so something along that line. Let me go to Commissioner Raines first, and then Commissioner Drew.
Just on the protocol of this item, what we should be doing today is looking at these projects here as they are. If it is the favor of this commission to go ahead and perhaps supplement some of these programs, I would think the correct protocol for doing that would be, hey, let's approve these as they are here, and at the next meeting, there's nothing to prevent these gentlemen from coming back up with, okay, at the last meeting you guys asked us for some places to supplement from funding on sage grouse, and then they would have time to review it and say, well, we thought that one was good, but I can't get matching federal funds, but this other one's better. They could come up with another proposal, an additional proposal, and not just the next meeting. We're not talking about next 10 years from now. We're talking the next meeting. It's a couple months off. This fund, get them through till there. If that's the favor, that would probably be the best protocol, and I think it would be easier on staff as well. Am I off on that, or would that be easier? Bring it back next time?
I'm certainly amenable to that. Mark mentioned something about some fiscal things, but I think we can work through that.
The only issue, but I think if these were approved first, that would free up that money, because a big concern, of course, is the availability of funds at the beginning of FY 2013, which is right around the corner. But as long as these were approved as is, that would provide plenty of near-term funding, and then the supplemental funding that could potentially be approved at the next commission meeting would then provide more funds available for later in the fiscal year. Because it's a bookkeeping thing, but we have to have what are called cost accounting codes that are developed by our fiscal services section. We have to have project numbers to charge things to, but that would work that way.
Yeah, Commissioner Drew.
The other idea I have, and I just hate retracing our same steps, is could we take maybe a 5 or 10 minute break and get a sense of some numbers that might make sense that are in the ballpark? It's agendized today. Get a sense of what maybe you guys could spend, and then let the public comment on that before we make a decision.
Or we can come back in August with a supplemental request.
A lot of numbers to crunch for them.
What's that? Yeah, but we could do it in August. It wouldn't be. Yeah, I agree. My recommendation is to deal, like Commissioner Raines said, deal with this. Then we'll, instead of scurrying around on the deck here, get the right people and come back with a supplemental recommendation, because we do have $503,000 in reserves there, and then we can give you more of a detail. We can look at the statistical design as well.
And that would also allow Alan Janae, who actually is the proposed project manager, and Sean is going to be intimately involved, but he actually proposed, he was the one that come up with the idea for the mining expansion area. So we need to, make sure he's involved in the question of how best to supplement the funding.
I have a question. On the telemetry project, you are getting some mining matching dollars on that?
Yes.
If we increase our funding, does mining increase their funding also? I'd like to ask that question because.
They need to come back in August.
And if we're bringing that back, I'd like to have that question answered because it's come up a few times during the Sage Grouse Committee that the sportsmen are paying the bulk of the science that is keeping all of industry in the game. I mean, and I just want to make sure that we continue to get industry that we're trying to help out and protect to keep coming with us. That's.
Just a second.
For the record, Elmer Bull, Chief of Habitat. As I think Mark mentioned earlier, we're having a meeting with representatives from the Nevada Mining Association to discuss the list of projects that we've submitted to them, including a $30,000 request. We could certainly discuss with their representatives this week the opportunity to increase that, and I don't think that would be an issue.
Okay.
Okay. And I agree with your approach. They should be supporting.
Okay. Any other commission comment? Commissioner Drew?
Just one last question. It's just a clarification. So for those projects that you listed the Carson Valley Chukar Club contributions to, we could back that out today. So, for example, Columbian Sharp-tailed Grouse reintroduction, you had listed 25,000 and then stated that Carson Valley Chukar kicked in 5. So do we need to approve 20 or 25,000?
As I understand it, it's the total you're approving, the 240050, and not the individual project amounts. Like I said, the donation was made literally the night before we printed this. So the cost proposals that are in this document do not reflect the relatively small deduction on a number of them. So, like I said, also, if you're interested, I have the specifics on how the donation on each project reduces the individual totals for every project, which is not reflected in the specific proposals in the back. But as long as you approve the total, what I'm going to do is I'm going to allocate, when we do the cost accounting codes, like I mentioned before, I'm going to slightly reduce, for example, the Columbian Sharp-tailed Grouse project is $25,000 without the CVC donation. So we're going to, when we allocate the actual cost accounting codes and free up money for the project manager to charge, he's only going to have $20,000 to charge because it's reduced by the donation amount. So as I understand it, you're just approving the total and not the amount per individual project. Is that correct? Because he's talking about using, because it basically leaves more money in the budget. The total account is what it does.
Right.
And I see where.
Does that answer your question?
It does. What I'm trying to say is, rather than approving you for 240, I'd like to do the 262 and take that 22,400 and put it right into the greater sage grouse research and monitoring. That's where I'm going with this.
That's where I was at.
And I think we can do that today, and then if you need some more for the sage grouse telemetry project, we can come back and handle that in August.
Okay.
Am I way off base in taking that approach?
That's simpler. Okay, I think I'd like to take it out to the public right now. Any members of the public have any comments on the Upland Game Bird projects? And we're spending that money. Come on up.
For the record, Paul Dixon, one thing I'd like to do is I'd like to thank the Department of Wildlife, Elmer and Russell and others, and Tim Wilson for working with the Overton Wildlife Management Area farmer, both in duck stamp and in upland game bird. For the first time in a while, he started to engage that, and we're starting to see some activity, and he's a very happy, Mr. Hardy's a very happy man that he's seeing a little additional amounts of money to help with habitat improvement and other things down their food plots. The other thing is based on seeing the, and not really realizing it until I got in and read carefully the upland game bird request, knowing that the CVC gave $22,000 plus or $20,500 to the system. I called Bill DeJunker, who is the head of WIN, which is a Wildlife Habitat Improvement for Nevada, and we're going to work together as part of their banquet next year to see if we can't get a donation from WIN for things like small guzzler projects and other things to offset stuff in the future. I think that's a great idea, and it's something that I had not thought about till I saw what was happening here and how it can impact things in a way. So that's where I'm headed for next year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, we'll bring it back to the commission, and I think we're ready probably for a motion. You want to go ahead and make a motion?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it. I would move to approve $240,050 for the proposed FY 2013 Upland Game Bird stamp projects as listed, with the $22,400 in donations from the Carson Valley Chukar Club being reallocated to the Greater Sage Grouse Research and Monitoring Project.
Okay. Clarification before you even get a second on that. You said 240,000. Did you mean 262,000, which is the total?
Correct. 262,450.
Second. Okay, I have a motion to second. Any additional comment, Commissioner Rain?
You know, I think that you're wrong in doing it that way, because that way that states is the Carson City money is all going to that one project. Let them put it the way they want it. The most reasonable, rational way of doing this to get exactly what you want that does not hurt these programs, and we've heard that from staff, is approve what staff wanted exactly as they put it on this piece of paper. Next meeting, they'll come back, they'll do the accounting, they'll figure out the matching funds, Elmer will straighten us out, and we'll say, and we'll do what you want or not or whatever. And they'll know whether or not they need the money. Throwing it at that, not knowing right now, I don't see how it's going to hurt it in the slightest. Wait till the next thing, and I think they've stated that. So therefore, I can't vote for that the way it is.
Can I clarify something as far as the wording? When the wording I heard directed the donation amount towards one project, I thought I heard that.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So another approach would be to approve 262, the higher number, with the extra 22,400 that's from the account, not from the donation. Be allocated to. That's what I thought.
And to clarify the motion, it would be the extra freed up in the account. I'm not redirecting their motion. And being from Douglas County and supporting the Carson Valley Chukar Club, I think they would realize the urgency of doing the sage grouse research and monitoring project, particularly in the bi-state area that affects Douglas County. So I'm not asking to reallocate their donated amounts. I'm asking to reallocate that $22,400 that was freed up to that project. So just so everyone's clear.
And that was the second's understanding as well.
Okay. Commissioner Rain, do you have any, is that satisfactory to,
you know,
that basically gets to the point of getting the money where Carson Valley wanted it?
That's fine, but you know, the accounting, there's nothing hurting to prove it as the department had. I would really like to just see them coming back the next time, and I think it'd be a 2-minute item, 5-minute item. Hey, do we want to put 22,400? Maybe they need 10,000 in that one, and they need 30,000 in the next one. I don't know what they need. I don't think they know what they need today. They needed this, what's on the paper today. They're going to look at it. If you had a motion saying, let's approve what the department presented, and with direction to come back at our next meeting and come up with some more proposals directed towards sage grouse, that would be more appropriate. Thank you.
Okay. I think the testimony was that they could use the 22 right where we've indicated it was going, and so I'm satisfied with that. Okay, I have a motion, and I have a second. Any additional comments, discussion from the commission? I'll go ahead and call for a vote. All in favor, say aye. 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 All opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Okay, raise hands on the nays. Okay, did you get that? Okay. Okay, motion passes 6-3. Okay, we're